I talked to my wife, and my wife was like, "Man, maybe you should change your name because Joe is just you,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're gonna expand, you should make a name that's kind of like I don't know, like a franchise or something."
Yep.
So she came up with this name called Barbers United.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the best name she could ever come up with.
Bob, how we doing today, my man?
Doing all right, buddy.
Doing
How about
good?
yourself? Yeah.
What we gonna get done today? What are we doing? Tell the
Uh,
people what you
yeah.
want.
Just need to get cleaned up, man. Give me a nice little taper on the sides
All
and
right,
back.
so we'll blot out the tapers. You want the beard lined up?
Yeah, oh, please. I definitely need
All
a
right,
beard lined up,
let's get it done.
especially
Let's
in the
get it
dog
done.
right there. I want to keep the length on the beard though.
Keep the length on the beard, keep the
Yeah.
length on top, or you
Yeah.
want anything off the top?
Yeah, I might trim a little bit.
All right, we'll trim it up. We'll get it looking right. So,
Yes, sir.
how we doing today? How we doing?
Doing better than I deserve, my friend. Doing pretty good.
Amen, amen. And guys, we switched up the location a little bit. We're not at Barbers United Knoxville. We're now in Barbers United Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we're here with the owner himself, Barber Joe. So, Bob, if you'll indulge with me a little bit here, we're gonna take a little bit journey down memory lane for you. We're standing here in Barbers United Barbershop, and this is one of two locations that you currently have.
Mm-hmm.
But I can remember, maybe 15 to 20 years ago now, when Barbers United was Joe's Barbershop. And Joe's Barbershop was in the back room of our house. And haircuts were $5. And it was just you. And you had a part-time job working as a construction worker. So, if you will, let's take a little trip down memory lane. And let's talk about how Joe's Barbershop in the back room became Barbers United now. What got you into it? Where do you want to start? What made you want to become a barber? Let's talk about that.
Well, I used to play with the clippers a little bit. Me and my cousin Jacob, we used to go back and forth cutting each other's hair back in high school, just trying to trim each other up, and didn't really know how to fade or nothing. So I would just pick my hair up like that, and clean up the side. He would clean it up for me, and I would do the same thing for him.
Yep.
Not much of a fader, but whatever we can get, that's what we did.
Yeah. So it's for me, when a lot of clients come in my shop, one of the main questions they want to ask me is, how did you get into barbering, right? What made you want to become a barber? And first thing, obviously, I say is, Pops is a barber. And so I said, well, what made him want to get into it, And so the story that I tell was, and I could be wrong in this. I was a little bit younger, so my memory is not perfect from this time. But the way I remember was, you were working construction, you were part of the union, and I remember you at some point, and it wasn't all your fault, but based on the job site and whatever, you had like flipped a scraper or something like that. And at this time, you were like kind of toying with the idea of maybe going to barber school or something. And you flipped a scraper and you came back and you were like, man, I got to switch careers.
Yeah,
I got to get out of this. So that's kind of the way that I see a turning point. I don't know if that's even that accurate.
Well, I had already
that's kind of what I remember. So you tell me that transition from being a construction worker to deciding to go to school.
Now that is true. I did flip a scraper, flip the haul truck too. I was in part of the union for about 12, 15 years. When that happened, I was I had decided, I was like, it's too dangerous. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Too dangerous for me to be doing stuff like this, and this, and I had already got my license, and I was already cutting part time in that back room that we had at the house. But that's when I decided to I paid off all my bills and got out of debt and decided to take a risk. I was calculating the hours, gas, mileage, everything that I was calculating everything, and I said, well, if I can do this many heads a day and this many heads a week, that I would I can get ahead, and I can make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It started off as a hobby, and then my couple of guys from the barber school started following me after I graduated, and then I just kept growing. I was starting to have people come to the house, and I would get laid off every winter, and when I would get laid off, that's when I would get to cutting hair.
Yep.
So it was great opportunity to.
Now, before we move forward there, I do want to take a step back and pause, because there are a lot of people, you cut them, a lot of clients that I have, and a lot of people may be watching this, where they're working a job, and it may be a good job like you had, where you made good money, you had good benefits, something that some people see as a career, but maybe that's not your passion. Maybe you don't feel like that's what you're meant to do, and they maybe have a hobby, or they maybe have something that they might be interested in doing long term, but they don't know how to make that step from doing the job that they're currently doing to getting into their passion and into a career that they want to pursue. So how did you get to the point where you finally decided that you were going to move forward, and what do you recommend for other people that are maybe in that same stage of life where they're interested in making that step but they're a little bit nervous? Do you have any advice for those people?
That's a good question, man. It's a really good question. Well, my advice would be to them guys, you know, the people out there, you guys watching. The way I did it was I paid all my bills, you know, so I didn't have any credit card debt, or I didn't have any kind of loans out there or anything, you know. I had some money saved up, you know, and then when I got laid off, that's when I went to barber school. You know, I took advantage of that time that I was laid off. But I would say, man, if you're really passionate about it, you're gonna have to pursue it. Because if not, you're gonna be living in regret every night. You know, every night saying, man, I wish I would have did it. I wish I would have did it. I should have did it. I should have did it. I say go for it. You know what I mean? That's the only advice I would say is try to have a budget. You know what I mean? If you're getting a budget,
Get your financials right.
Yep, get your money right. You know, at least paying all your bills. That way, you might have to work another job meantime. You know, and that's how I did it. I didn't go full force barbering. For about 4 or 5 years, and then I rented a shop, and that's when we started, going part time. I was working 4 10s, and then I would get Friday and Saturday to cut hair, and just build my clientele. Just keep grinding and staying to work, coming in early, staying late. But at the same time, I was still doing my other job, and trying to raise a family and stuff like that.
So you open your first shop, and you're currently, when you opened that first shop, you were still doing construction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
4 days out of the week, and then you would go work at that shop.
4 10s.
Yep, on that weekend. Okay.
And I was thankful for that job, because 4 10s, because I was getting my 40 hours in 4 days, and then I had the whole weekend to cut hair. And a lot of the guys, they like, when I first started, they like getting their haircut Fridays and Saturdays. But yeah, that I was still able to pay my bills with my construction job. And then with the money that I was making with from barbering, I was throwing it back into the barber shop, little by little, buy a chair here, buy a chair there. But it was nothing new. It was a bunch of used equipment and stuff like that I was buying,
Yep. So how long were you in that first shop?
Oh, my first shop on Brooklyn. I wasn't there long at all, Jonas. I think we were open there for a total of 3 months.
Is that all it was?
Yep, 3 months.
No way.
Yes, sir. My windows got broken, and I got put out of business. My windows got broken, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna fix them. So I had a little bit of savings, had about $600 saved up, and decided to fix my windows. And so I paid my deductible for my insurance, got them fixed, and then the next day they got broken again.
Yep.
So when they broke them, I was like, I'm done. I can't put my family through this, and I hung it up right there and then. I was like, I'm done with the business part of this. I'm not gonna open, So I talked to the landlord, and he was super nice. He let me out the lease, and and that was it, And I quit for a minute. I just went back home to work out of my back room that we had there at the house. But yeah, 3 months. I think that's how long it was.
I really didn't realize it was only 3 months. If you would have asked me, I would have said like about a year or so.
3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was still working that construction job.
Yeah.
And then they'll call me at work. The police would call me like, "Hey, your windows are broken." So, unfortunately, that wasn't the last time my windows got broken.
So we take a break. You take a break. You go back to the back room for how long? How long before you decide, you know what? I know I'm meant to do this. I know I want to get a shop. I'm going to do this again. How long before you make that decision?
Well, I was driving down the road one day, and I had a cell phone. It started ringing, and it was raining pretty hard. So I needed to take this call. So I turned, and then I turned on South Lane, and then my phone rang, and I just pulled over to the side, and I don't know who it was, but I was talking on the phone, and I was just looking around, and I seen this building right there. I already forgot the address, 39.
It was 626 West Brandy.
That's what my first shop was
626 West Brandy.
After I came back, I was facing Brandy Street. I seen a for rent sign. I called it right away, and a gentleman named Jim Gawler answered, and he was like, "Hey, man, the space is available, but it's X amount of dollars." And I was like, "Oh man, that's too much, man. That's not in my budget." And he goes, "Well," so I left him a message. Then he called me back, and then he told me how much it was. And I was like, no, that's too much, man. He goes, but I got another building right next to it. In the back side, it was actually facing Brandon. And I didn't pay attention. So I went back and I was like, this is perfect. It was a little room, probably about 400 square feet, 500 square feet. And I was there for a whole year, Jonas, by myself.
Just yourself.
Yeah, a whole year. I got laid off. We sold our house. I don't know if you remember, we lived with grandma there for a little while.
Yep.
Because we sold our house, and I stayed in that shop by myself for a whole year. And then I called Jim one day because that front building never got rented. And I said, hey, Jim, man, you think you give me an opportunity to take that side over? And as I start building more customers, because it's on the main street, I'll start paying more rent, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, sure thing, man. And I mean, as soon as I hung up the phone with him, I was moving my equipment over there right away. I mean, not even, I hung up and I moved it. He gave me the key. I was in there. I called the light company, switched over my light, called the water company, called everybody, you know?
Yep.
Just to switch it over real quick.
Wait, before you move further, at this point, are you still working construction?
Yes.
So you're a year into having the shop on the side, but you're still doing construction. Now you've moved to the front.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Keep going.
Yeah, so I'm back in the front there, and there's a gentleman named Casey that he wanted to go to barber school. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, you'll do well. And, you know, I was encouraging him to go to barber school. So, and then I was like, he can come work here with us. Because I used to cut his hair, him and his friend named Carlos.
Yep.
And Casey decided to sign up for barber school. And then one day he called me up. He was like, hey, man, there's this gentleman named Jose, man. You need to talk to him. He's probably about 19, 20 years old, young barber. He goes, he's nice. He can cut really good. He got a good attitude, and you should talk to him. And I was like, well, give me his number, and I'll call him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I called him, and I messaged him, and I called him, and I messaged him. And I think it took him, you know, a couple months before he ever called me back. And then one day he called me about 10:30 at night. He was like, hey, man, I want to come see the barbershop. I was like, right now?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, right now. I was like, all right, I'll meet you right now. So I took off at 10:30 at night. And I'm at the barbershop unlocking it. And I mean, everything was, he was excited. I was excited. And we kind of just he's probably been the best barber. He has been the best barber that he's been working with me since then, you know. It's been probably about like 15 years already, more than 50. I don't even know how long it's been, you know.
That's your number one right there.
Yeah. Yep, Pepper 260 Cuts, man. He's super nice, man. Super nice.
He's the man. Now, knowing what you know now and being in this shop and having the clients and stuff like that, do you find it kind of mind-blowing that a guy like Pep, who didn't know you at all, but young barber, up and coming, and he would walk into the shop that you used to have, and he would have faith and trust in you? Like, was that nerve-wracking at the time for you? Like, how overwhelmed were you knowing you got a young barber and now you got to put people in his chair as well, and not just yours?
Well, the thing is, man, he was from here, from Fort Wayne. So he went to high school here, and he pretty much, I think he went to middle school and high school here. So he already had quite a few, and he's got a big family. He got a really big family, so he's got quite a few customers. They're already coming to him. Mm-hmm. And then we would start having walk-ins and stuff like that too, you know.
Yep.
And we didn't have social media. We didn't have, you know, the Instagram and the Facebook and the TikToks and that stuff. We just had word of mouth and knocking on doors, passing out cards. You know, wherever we were at, gas stations, church, it don't matter, library, wherever we were at, we were trying to get the name out. The grocery store, anywhere, everywhere. I was passing out cards, passing out flyers, passing them out. If I was sitting at the shop and I have no haircuts or nothing, I would walk through the neighborhood and just put cards on people's doors, put them on their cars. I would hang out at football games, basketball games, passing out cards, you know, and that's how we did it back in the day. We didn't have the social media, you know.
Yep. All right, so let's get back to our timeline here. How long are we cutting there at 4039 South Wayne? How long is that Joe's Barbershop?
Man, I think that we were there for like,
because at that point it still is Joe's Barbershop, right?
Yep, Joe's Barbershop. Yep. I think we decided about 4 or 5 years in.
At what point did you walk away from construction as well? We didn't.
I think it was around 2012. I decided to go full-time barbering. I was working with a crane company here in Fort Wayne, and I was booming out, and the crane had two cables in it, and I failed to realize that both of the balls were up there. I only seen one, and when I was extending the boom out, well, I heard some cracking and some popping and stuff like that, and next thing you know, man, the big old 200-pound ball just snapped off, and there was a gentleman down there, a truck driver, and the thing just like snapped off and flew. I mean, it just went straight to the ground, boom, hit the ground, man. And I'm thinking, man, I could have killed this guy, man. And that's when the light bulb turned on. I was like, man, you know, it's one thing if I kill myself, but when I kill somebody else, man, I couldn't live with that, man. So that's when I decided. I went home, I talked to my wife, and we prayed about it. And I was like, hey, honey, I think this is gonna be best, you know. And by that point, I already had, you know, a lot of people calling me. I would be at work, people would be calling me, and like, hey, you gonna be at the shop? You gonna be at the shop? You gonna be at the shop? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there later. I'll be there later. So I don't know. My heart was already trying to, you know, leaning towards the shop 100%.
At what point do you decide, let's go for a second building? Let's expand?
Oh man, that was something that it was just God just laid it in my hands, man. We were on. A gentleman was selling a barber chair, and he had a barber shop on Anthony and Rudelsville, very popular street here in Fort Wayne, on the south side here in Fort Wayne. And I went to go talk to this gentleman. His name was Jeff, and he was selling this barber chair, and he was like, hey man, you know, and it was in my budget, so I was like, hey, I'll be over there to pick it up. So one of my good friends, Barbers, Salvador, I called him up, like, hey man, let's go help me pick up this barber chair. So we got the chair loaded up. I paid the gentleman, and then I asked him, I was like, hey man, so I mean, why are you selling all your chairs, you know? And the gentleman was like, well, I'm moving, you know, I'm moving down to Indianapolis or Atlanta or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, well, what are you going to do with your building? Just asking, just curious. And he was like, oh, I'm just going to give it back to the church, because there's a church right next door that owned it, you know?
Yep.
And I was like, well, I was like, that's it? And like, you're just going to give it up? He goes, yeah, man. So I was like, he goes, I can give you that guy's number if you're interested in renting it out. And I was like, I mean, it's worth a try, you know? So I called the gentleman. Like that, Jeff left that Saturday, and I was in there. He finished cutting hair around 4 or 5 on Saturday, and we were back in there on Tuesday. You know, so we never closed the doors. Never closed the doors. And Salvador was with me at the time too. So I was like, Salvador, man, you want to work over here? Because Salvador was working with me at South Wayne, but we didn't have any room for him. We just put a chair on the corner there. He didn't even have a mirror and a station, nothing. He was just hanging his clippers on the edge of the where the mirror is at, like a little the windows are at, like a little platform, probably about
on the windowsill kind of thing.
Probably about that wide, about 6 inches, 8 inches, and just setting his clippers on there. We moved a couple chairs that were like waiting area chairs. Yep. And I was like, man, and the guys, I think the guys at the shop were like, well, we need to put him somewhere else, you know? Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, we ended up opening the shop over there. And then, you know, we went from there too, man. And that place was already established, been there 20, 25 years, you know? I can't even tell you how long that shop's been there, but it was already established. And, you know, he wanted to do it. So I sent them over, you know, we put him over there, and they made it affordable for us to rent the place. I mean, the building wasn't even that big either. It was a little bit bigger than South Wayne, but it was its own building, you know? Yep. And that's when we decided to go for that second location. And it was a struggle, though, you know? It was a struggle sometimes, just managing it and keeping it clean and, you know, trying to keep it professional. But, yeah, we went from there. And I think that's when we decided to change the name from Joe's Barbershop to Barbers United Barbershop.
What made that? Why did you do that?
Well, there were some people that were always walking the shop, and they were like, well, where's Joe at? You know, because they wanted to see Joe. And I was like, well, it's not just about me, you know, it's about all of us, you know. Yep. So I talked to my wife, and my wife was like, man, maybe you should change the name, because, you know, Joe is just you know. And if you're going to expand, you should make a name that's kind of like, I don't know, like a franchise or something, you know? Yep. so she came up with this name called Barbers United, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was the best name she could ever come up with, you know.
Yep.
I mean, I couldn't think of anything better than that.
Did you go to the third shop while you still had Anthony, or did you close Anthony
No,
before you moved?
we ended up going to Covington. We were
Okay,
like,
so we go for a third one while we
yep,
have
yep, yep.
Anthony. Okay.
So both shops are pretty much full, you know, with barbers, and
Yep.
as much as I can do. And I was like, okay, well, let's look for another location that's, you know, out west, something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we found that place on Covington Road, and we picked out some chairs. We set up. We were trying to go for a new look, and just try to make it more a little upscale and try to keep it, you know, a little more professional, stuff like that. So we figured there was no barbershops on this side of town. So that's when we were looking around, and we found a place on the west side on Covington Road, and we already had the name. So um, and we went from there. I think we had like 4 chairs or 8 chairs when we first started, 6 chairs, something like that. And I was trying to find barbers, trying to find barbers, trying to find barbers. You know, I reached out to a few barbers. I reached out to a couple of other barbers. I went to visit them at the schools and stuff like that, and nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, you know, when I was getting ready to open, my opening date was, I don't know, in the summer or something like that. And I spoke with Jose. I was like, hey, Jose, man, I'm gonna open this shop, man. If I'd like for you to come over here, you know, um, and then we can expand, and then we can start. You know, I was at the time we were only charging like $12 a haircut or something like that. So we were like, well, let's charge. You know, let's if we give a better location, you know, a better atmosphere. I don't know. We just thought that we could step it up. We still had room for growth, you know. So it was like, well, maybe we can charge more if we give better services and a better location, you know.
Yep.
So I think we ended up going up to like $18 at the time, and sure enough, man, I was out there passing out flyers, putting them on cars, football games, you know, everywhere I could go, you know, anywhere I could think of, you know, putting them on the gas pumps, putting them in the bathrooms, putting them, you know, at the gym, wherever I went, you know, trying to pass
Mm-hmm.
out market, and that's the only marketing I knew.
Now, this in my head, and tell me if I'm wrong here. In my head, this is where things start to change, right?
I think it
Moving to Covington was a game changer for the
oh
shop, right?
for sure.
So shop starts growing quick, right? I mean, I remember, I don't really even remember a time when Covington wasn't full, and Covington could have well up to 12 barbers. Was there 12 barbers in there or
Man,
more? Was there more?
I'm trying to
I
remember,
feel
man.
like I can envision at least between
I think it was like 10
10,
barbers. Yeah,
10. Okay,
I think it
so
was like
let's
10.
say there's 10 barbers. I don't remember a time when all 10 chairs weren't full. I feel like they got filled up so quickly and they stayed full. So how long between opening in Covington and things really taking off?
I think it took about at least another. It took some time, Jonas. It just didn't happen overnight, man.
I mean, but it takes some time or took like a year
It
or
took
took
about, I think,
18
about a
months, because
year,
to me
about
that's
18.
not in the business world, in the big picture, that's not a lot of time for a business to become successful. I mean, it wasn't overnight, it wasn't 3 months, it wasn't 6 months, but within a year or two of opening the doors, that place was flooded. And like you said, this was a different area, this was a different demographic than you had been in, different
Right.
price point, everything was new. And like you said, upscale, a more upscale barbershop, more professional, everything was new. And within a year to 2 years,
I think it took about,
it was
yeah, I would say
going.
about 18 months, man. Because same thing. I was out there trying to talk to barbers, talk to, you know, barbers have been cutting for a while. And then I went to the schools, you know, trying to recruit younger barbers. And yeah, it took about, I'd say about a year, not a year, 6 months, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do remember the shop getting full, you know.
Now, for time's sake, let's go ahead and let's fast forward a little bit on the timeline. Eventually, you do decide to close the doors at both Anthony and South Wayne, but not before opening up another shop out north. So you done south, you did west, and then you decide to move up north. What made you want to go for at that time? Because at one point it was 4 shops, right? Was there 4 shops going at one point?
No, I think we had Anthony, and then we closed Anthony down, and then I brought the guys from Anthony out west, So then we got the West. So we still had two shops,
So you
South
had
Wayne
South Wayne
and Covington.
and Covington.
Yep. So then at that time, I got another one, amazing barber from town here. He came to work with me, and then when he came to work with me, they were like, "Hey man, we need to branch off. We need to branch off again." I said, "Well, I mean, because the shop was full and there was all the clients were in there." And he was like, "So at that point, I was just, I wanted to listen to the guys and try to see what if they wanted to do it, that I would back them and we could do it together, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, yep. So we ended up, four of the guys from the Covington shop ended up going to the North shop. And when we went to the North shop, we started off with, I think, 9 chairs at the North shop. And then that's when, yeah, slowly but surely, those guys started attracting different barbers. And then I was still trying to do my part, encouraging, praying, and motivating, and just being a team player too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, we opened that one. And we expanded it, you know. And I think we were there. And while we were there, that's when we got the opportunity to go into the gym, because South Wayne, we were getting ready to leave South Wayne, and I was able to get. Well, that was later on. I mean, we ended up moving from Covington and coming out here to Jefferson. Yeah.
You moved to West shops, just a
Yep.
couple of blocks away.
Yep.
Yep. To a bigger shop, right? You needed more space.
Well, our lease was up, and they sold the building. And when they sold the building, the new landlord wanted to use all the space for a gym. So, he comes in one day like, "Hey, my name is so and so, and I'm the new owner." And I'm like, "Hey, nice to meet you, man." He's like, "Hey, man, I need you out by the end of the month." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right, good talk." So yeah, I had to get on the grind right away, and here I go driving around town trying to look for a spot, and then we ended up finding this spot here in the Park West Center, 3950 West Jefferson Boulevard, and we were like, okay. Um, Talked to the landlord. They made it affordable for us to get started. Um, he let me work on some things here, and we went from there. But the space ended up being quite a few more 100 square feet bigger, so I was able to put in quite a few more barber chairs in there, and it was a really good decision for us. It has its pros and cons, though. Sometimes when there's too many barbers, they don't get along or agree on everything. But sometimes, when everybody's getting along and it's working like a well-oiled machine, that the train does not stop. The train is moving.
Moving. So because I do want to get into a little bit of kind of what's the transition you've kind of started to make over the last year or so, and the next step kind of in your in your journey this in life here. But just to throw it out there, what was the most barbers you had under your shops, under your wings at one point?
I think when we got rid of South Wayne and we just had Coldwater and Jefferson Point. Well, I mean Jefferson. I think at the one point, I think we had like 20. I think 10, like 24 barbers, 26 barbers at one point. That was probably the most that we've ever had, I think.
Between 3 or 4 shops?
Just between two shops.
Okay.
Between both shops, I think. Hey, Julian, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, between two shops, I think we had a total of like 26 barbers, man. If I can remember correctly. There's still quite a few of us now. I don't know if we have 26 now, though.
Now, a lot of people ask me, after I tell them, you're the reason that we got into barbering, and you cut hair and you got a barber shop, and then the next question is, does he still cut hair? And I don't know how to answer that. Do you still cut hair?